Hey folks, I'm here at IBMA, and I thought that this would be a good opportunity to maybe get some answers to questions that you guys ask all the time. So we assembled our crack team, and we thought long and hard about questions that you might want the answer to, and we came up with this. How do you play Tony Rice-style rhythm? Tony Rice is a legendary guitar player, and I've transcribed hundreds of his guitar breaks. In fact, I have an unofficial tab book that's got over 80 breaks in it, but you won't find any rhythm playing in that book. To get that, we have to go to the pros.
You know, we've had these conversations specifically about improvising where you're kind of like, how do you teach it? Like, how do you teach someone how to be cool? I found something that I agree with a lot, and it is the Tony Rice style rhythm. It's a combination of so many different things.
Yeah.
How do you teach someone to like put all that together? I think it's kind of impossible.
It's kind of impossible. I think it starts with Clarence White. If you want to play rhythm like Tony, you have to be able to like play in the mind of Clarence White a little bit.
If you want to play cricket, you gotta know what a crumpet is.
Cricket? Cricket? Nobody understands cricket. You gotta know what a crumpet is to understand cricket. I'll teach you.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
That's a quote from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that came out in like '93.
Yeah, I was there.
You weren't with us yet. You would have liked it.
I don't think I would. Yeah, to get into the Tony rhythm for me, like the stuff, what makes it great, there's all this like, I mean, the thing that sticks out is like the, like, this is never going to be right again. That's the thing that I think a lot of people, they say like, oh, that Tony Rice rhythm, that's something that stands out to them, you know. Which I tend to think of like a bar of that rhythm and a bar of like really straight rhythm to cut it. So like here's your, and then next, yeah, a little simple after that. So. That kind of deal. And that figure is right down, 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 up. A lot of people want to go all the way through down, down, right? But that's like one small part of it. Really, I think that like what makes his rhythm playing great, what makes Clarence's rhythm playing great too, is just the syncopation. You know, so you hear Clarence play something like, oh meet me tonight, oh meet me, you know this one, right? Meet me out in that moonlight alone. He might play like. That's a crazy thing.
He's been helping them, Jay Jetty, but that syncopation thing, definitely.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, some of my favorite examples of like just great syncopated rhythm, a la Clarence White, would be like the Live in Sweden thing, 1973.
Just talking about it.
It's incredible. And then some of the like, you know, that one that's like, I think Russ Barenberg had something to do with like, it's like Clarence White and the Kentucky Colonels. It's like a blue cover with his face. That has a lot of great like rhythm playing on like Alabama Jubilee or like If You're Ever Gonna Love Me, stuff like that. And then for Tony's rhythm, I think it's like fine in the early days, but really, really great towards the end. It gets better and better.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically like Letter From My Darling, album band cut. It's really like G tune that's kind of really mid-tempo, really good. And then also there's this cut of Baby Blue Eyes on a record called The Harvest by Kathy Chiavola? Chiavola? Yeah, she's a great singer. I don't know her, but
That's why I hired Hayes.
thank you, Hayes.
Correct pronunciation.
She has a cut of this tune, yeah, Baby Blue Eyes from The Harvest, that Tony plays rhythm on it is like just unbelievable. Greatest rhythm playing I've probably ever heard. Cut it'll cut in the video right here.
I wonder if I'll ever forget you, and if I love that.
required listen. It's like amazing. And then I don't know what your question was.
So yeah, the first thing I want to ask you about is something that I get asked about on YouTube a lot, and we're asking everyone that we talk to about Tony Rice style rhythm, because everyone talks about Tony Rice, and there's this thing that people do where they're like, oh, it's not even about his lead playing, it's about the rhythm playing, and I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
But then you try to quantify the rhythm playing. You try to like put a boundary on that. What is it?
Yeah.
And it seems like a really hard question to answer. Do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, for me, it's hard to overshadow that lead play and stuff, because it's like when I think Tony, I think those licks.
Yeah.
But just having listened to a bunch of Kentucky Colonel stuff coming to IBMA this week, it just seems like a continuation of Clarence's rhythm. There's so much cool stuff, these pushes and pulls that, a normal rhythm player wouldn't play, and or just wouldn't think of. That just added so much. And then Tony, of course, brought all the jazz chords and all these cool different, leading up to the chord sort of stuff. Yeah, for me, I've always focused on the Tony lead stuff, so I'm in that camp. You're not going to find a better rhythm player either, So
Can you give me an example of something that people would call like Tony Rice rhythm?
Yeah, I would think like just even over, Little Cabin Home on the Hill. Like there was a lot of stuff that when I hear him play, wasn't as busy as like Doc. You hear a lot of those Doc rhythm things, and Doc's playing lead, a lot of lead stuff behind fiddle player, or even when Merle was playing, you hear a lot of lead licks. I still think of him like a piano player, like a lot of pad chords and stuff like that,
It's so interesting when we ask people this question, because we get a lot of like similar answers.
Oh yeah.
But then the examples you play are wildly different.
Yeah.
Right. And I still agree. I'm still like, oh yeah, that sounds like Tony.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the cool thing about Tony. I saw him a bunch of times live, but my favorite time, he kicked off with Big Country, the kind of obscure Jimmy Martin, J.D. Crowe thing, and then went into my favorite things, and did like this 10-minute version. It was just like, and it was East Tennessee, so you had all these people that loved Big Country.
That's
and
crazy.
then scratched their head for 10 minutes during that. But it was so great, and it's like he played so wildly different on those two songs that it was really inspiring.
So as an example of some of the things that you just did, you did a bunch of kind of extended harmony where, for instance, you played, I think you played a G, like a rootless G9, kind of like a B minor 7 flat 5 if you want to be a nerd. But that's like 2-3-2-3. You played that over the G chord instead of a G7. And then I think you played a D11, like barring at the 5th fret. For that guy. Yeah, right, that kind of sound. And I think you just played a C7. Did he play something else for C? Did you just play C7? I think you might have done the G11 too, where he kind of mixes a G chord and an F chord.
Oh, yeah.
That cool sound? Right, yeah, right. So that's an interesting thing that you clued into. You're like, oh yeah, like all the harmonic things, like it's so dense compared to just like G chord, C chord, D chord. Whereas when for instance, when we asked Jake Eddy this question, he was all about the sort of the cross-picking rhythm, like boom, chuck, do-do-do-do, boom.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like Home from the Forest.
Yeah.
When you hear him. Yeah, that whole, instead of playing, very square rhythm, that was a lot of cool.
To me, it almost feels like there's two big camps where we have like the Tony rhythm that's like the harmonically dense thing, and then we have like this more like Church Street Blues cross-picking.
Yeah.
Basically, like half the tunes on that album are all in that style.
Yeah.
And I think that one's even harder to explain. Like
It is,
trying to
yeah.
explain that break from Home for the Forest, it's difficult to try to get in someone's head.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like I when I hear Tony play, obviously you hear Clarence, but I even hear like Maybell influence and that stuff because it's all this upstroke. You know, every downstroke gets an upstroke.
Yeah.
That sort of thing where it's like Tony played a lot of upstrokes. Like, you know, it's way different, but I still hear that sort of influence, you know. It's like whether it came from Doc or whether it came from Clarence, you know.
Isn't it weird how the upstroke is almost like an invention in like folk music history? Like if you listen to like old enough stuff, it's like all downstrokes.
Yeah.
And
how
then,
boring would it be now if it was just and especially as out of tune as I am.
We're asking a lot of players about playing bluegrass, rhythm, guitar, and one thing is I've been teaching for so long, but one of the things I find very difficult to get across to students is kind of the Tony Rice style rhythm. And I know you don't play Tony Rice style note for note, but you definitely are in the school where you're not always going like this. You know, the Tony thing more like it has a certain vibe and flow that's really hard to get across to people.
Like the rolling kind of.
Yeah, how would you describe that almost contemporary modern style of rhythm? What's the difference, and could you begin to explain that in English words on the difference between this and how you would morph that into a...
Yeah, for me, like a lot of times as I hear the rolling thing, it's getting in between the mandolin and the bass, if that makes sense. And not really, like a lot of, if you're doing those bass notes, the bass is already doing that. The mandolin's doing that chop. So kind of finding the in-between things. And honestly, being a banjo player from the beginning, kind of hearing a roll too, which if you listen to Rice, it's kind of a roll. There's different things.
Yeah.
Instead of
At the crazy fast tempos, do you have time to put in those cross-picking rhythms, or sometimes does it go so fast that you have to resort to leaving some of that out?
You definitely have to leave some out, but I could definitely try to keep that going, you know.
Sure.
You want to try? I don't know if I do.
When you're doing the cross-picking, are you doing all down strokes for this?
Yeah.
And then an up at the end?
Which a lot of the cross-picking, I told you I had a couple of lessons when I first started playing. And the guy taught me cross-picking down, up.
Double down, up. And that's still the way you do it today?
A little bit of both, because over the years I definitely started alternating, and it felt like it opened some things up in the arm.
Right.
And
would you recommend someone does both? How would you recommend someone learn to cross-pick?
probably alternating first. And then once you get that a little bit, a lot of people have done that, and I've showed them the down, up. And I'm like, oh, that makes so much more sense. And I guess it depends on your technique. Like, it's a little bit easier to do that kind of anchored. And the tone is different too. And you'll see the kind of Rice, if you know what I mean, the thumb.
Totally.
Kind of start to go.
So in general, these days, you are anchored or not anchored?
Half and half.
Half and half?
Yeah. If I can stay anchored, I'll wheel, but if it gets to a certain speed, it's not going to be fluent or sound as good if I just let up, you know? And the
Right.
tone changes, of course, but it is what it is.
Right. And you have, of course, like a pick angle. Are you conscious of where the pick is angled against the string?
Not exactly. I just kind of just wherever it kind of goes now. Don't really think about it. But definitely like the sweet spot for me is back at the back of the sound hole. And I could tell from years when I first started playing with Ricky that I played more back here. I could tell from what the strings, where it would be, you know. But the more sweeter sound is.
Yeah, absolutely.
The first thing that we've been asking everyone about Tony Rice style rhythm. And here's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Maybe this will happen again. Everyone that we've talked to has kind of given the same answer, but when they go to play their instrument, they play something a little bit different. What people think Tony Rice style rhythm is doesn't agree, doesn't align from player to player.
Yeah.
It's always something very interesting. What does that mean to you? And then maybe we'll get you to play something for us.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that Tony Rice style rhythm has to do with being dynamic. And I mean that in terms of, volume. Everybody, when you say dynamic in a musical context, we're usually talking about like volume. And that's true. That's certainly part of it. Tony played rhythm in a very dynamic way. Mm-hmm. He'd be very quiet, and he'd really punch things. At the end of a vocal phrase, jackata. You hear in those Bluegrass album band things, like something would happen, Crow would do something, and Tony would like really nail it. So there's that kind of dynamic thing. But there's this other sense of the word dynamic, which is like not quite so literal. It's just like he would move. Somebody would do something, and he would change his pattern, or he would respond. It's like he wasn't just going boom, chuck, bass, strum, bass, strum, bass, strum,
Yeah.
It's kind of fun when you do hear him do that, because he actually does it so beautifully, and there's actually not a lot of the strum. There's a lot, if you listen to like tone poems or when he's doing duet stuff, especially with Grissman, you'll hear him kind of just playing bass. But in a bluegrass band context, there's not really a clear pattern to what he's doing. Obviously, he'll do, he'll keep his motor going, like that a bunch. But then he'll, of course, do the Rice style thing and kind of flip that pick backwards and go through a few of them like that. He'll push, go to the 5 chord, and he'll go there 1/16 early. You know that move that he does. The don't da 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 da. So he has all these these cool things that he'll do, but to me, what actually makes it distinct from everybody else is the degree to which it is actively part of the conversation, part of the musical conversation. He'll play a different chord. If somebody's playing a G major, if the rest of the band's in G major, sometimes he'll play a B flat triad.
Yeah.
And it just sounds mean and nasty. Or he'll play one of those B flat 6/9s.
Yeah, you'll play like in Assault Creek or something.
Yeah.
Like the F chord comes up and he plays B flat 6/9.
Crazy.
It's wild.
But he got that from Clarence, and a thing that Tony said about Clarence, one of the things that he loved about Clarence's rhythm guitar playing is that Clarence was so fearless. He said that's what he took from Clarence when he was a boy.
Yeah.
He took how fearless he was. And I think that's really like a hallmark of Tony as a rhythm guitar player, is that he's fearless. But he also, another thing, if you talk to anybody who ever played with Tony, they'll say the same thing. Like Bela, I've heard him in an interview, because to me, rhythm guitar, I can't play rhythm guitar like Tony, but that's really my North Star. Especially playing in Mighty Poplar now, because we actually play bluegrass. In interviews, I'm like, we play real deal bluegrass. What that means to me is that I get to cosplay Tony Rice. But I get serious about it. I really try and make it good, as best as I can anyway. And that's a very different thing than even playing rhythm in Punch Brothers,
Yeah.
Anyway, but everybody would say it was just so easy to play with Tony. So he would do all this fearless stuff. He would play all this crazy stuff, but also he was so in the music. He was so in that kind of subdivision. I think he felt that subdivision, that thing from Crow, so clearly. Because it's interesting when Tony comes out of a solo. That's to me is one of the most amazing moments to hear Tony strum on a guitar, is after he plays a G. Those first few strums are so in the pocket every time, and it's wild. It's so that he's also connected to that J.D. Crowe, Jimmy Martin time feel, because I feel like that's actually one line. It's like Bill, but Jimmy Martin had his own thing that's has that thing, and then Crow kind of was the perfect guy to do that on banjo. It was just effortless. Came in as a teenager and was doing it right, and then I think Tony got it from that. So
do you ever feel like Tony, how he feels the groove when he's playing lead? I feel like there's moments where he's getting to the end of the break, and almost to enhance tension or something, he will drag a little bit more, or he'll push a little bit more. But when he hits that rhythm moment, it's perfectly inside.
It's just in the pocket. It's just in the pocket. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. He knew exactly what he was doing. Well, it's dramatic, when you do that. That's a dramatic effect. That's a very dramatic effect. But he was so good, obviously. I mean, he's the greatest. And, that was one of the things, is that I feel like that kind of internal, the Jimmy Martin motor, that thing was always so dialed on Tony. So it could be anything. He'd do these the kind of sweep things. He would do the Jimmy Martin motor. He would play these crazy chord substitutions.
Andy, would you grab Critter's guitar? I want to hear the jaga gaja. I want to hear the juka ba ba ba.
Well, you know what?
I want to hear the do 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 do.
I'll do it, but you know what? In all honesty, thank you. In all honesty, and this, I'll give it my best shot. But it is true. It's very hard to do without a band. Because
Tony says that in an interview. Someone puts a camera in his face and is like, "Hey, tell me about how you play rhythm guitar." And he says,
Yeah.
"Oh, I can't do it without everyone here."
it's because it doesn't really make sense. It's like it's only something that kind of makes sense. And also I think the band is part of what you're cueing off of. Even Tony, anybody. Tony's a musician still, even though he's the man, he's still like the rest of us in that he's just kind of working with the same stuff. Like he's cueing off of the band and kind of playing dynamically, playing to the band. The band will stretch, he'll stretch with them, or he'll stretch the band, But it's really hard to. It's actually hard to do this. But I can show you some things that he would do. I mean, if you're thinking about like Blue Ridge Cabin Home, so. It's hard to do without people there,
I think a lot of people latch on to like the stunts, the tricks.
Yeah.
That really isn't the thing. That's such a small part of it.
No.
And they're like, yeah, D chord, I'm going to bar, 5th fret, this kind of thing. That's not actually what it is.
Yeah.
You can teach that stuff really quick, and you're still not going to sound like Tony.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's hard to do it right, too, because you have to do it. You have to, like for that one, it's like this very specific way, if you want to get that sound, that you have to do the right hand.
Yeah, a lot of these little like rhythm fills and tricks, he has like a preference on the syncopation, and you can hear it in all the little, that kind of like little Tony, like he's got like a way he wants to put it together,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally.
Do you know the Blue Ridge Cabin Home break off the top of your head?
Which one is that?
It's like all the others. No, I think you're thinking of Love is Like a Flower.
Yeah. Put it together between the two of us. Yeah. It's the time I knew it. I knew all that stuff. Yeah.
In any book you pick up, practically, this shows you how to play rhythm guitar. Is this, and that's great. For about a month.
Yeah.
If we're watching 81 Crow and we're watching the guys in the hotel rooms.
Oh yeah.
Or listening to a Tony Rice album. Like, okay, what is Tony Rice rhythm to you? And when I say Tony Rice rhythm, I don't even necessarily mean Tony Rice rhythm. What I mean is, what is modern guitar rhythm?
Just great bluegrass rhythm.
Great
period.
bluegrass rhythm. Period. There you go.
Man, I'm a firm believer in playing rhythm in a simple enough way that you create a pad or a fluffy bed for everybody else to play on top of.
Yeah.
And if I tried to do all the many fills and chord substitutions and stuff that Tony did, maybe it's just me, but I feel like I would lose the groove a little bit. I'm all about setting that pad. So
is that too though? Is that the groove? Is that because there's so many guitar players in the band?
Yeah.
That you have to hold tighter to the chords.
Yeah, but in the mix, you're out front. You're hearing a heavier amount of me.
Okay.
I don't. In fact, it more works in that band. At least the way I'm looking at it. Maybe those guys would disagree or not realize that I'm looking at it this way. But I look at it as like I can do rhythmically whatever I want, and they'll cater to it.
Okay, that's
not
awesome.
that I'm like I need to be the star, but the lead guitar and rhythm role is my role. I'm not also a singer. I'm not. This is my job.
This is thing.
And he hired me for that, so I don't feel bad by kind of just playing it how I want to, as big as I want it, and then let them fill in the gaps however they want.
Yeah.
But back to your question, you know, like I'll fill it in with upstrokes, like, and I accent 2 and 4, but I accent 4 just a touch harder.
Really?
Not all the time, but it feels right. If I'm jamming at IBMA with great players, guarantee you can listen to my rhythm and deduce that from it. But sometimes I'll hit that upstroke hard with it. And the rhythm has to drive from this motion here. If you're driving your rhythm from the elbow.
Where'd you learn that from?
What's that?
Where'd you learn that from? Like,
Luckily that came naturally.
Okay.
But after a while I did realize it was a thing. I held my pick very different back in the day. There's so much I could talk about, but despite the pick grip being different, I did notice that early on I was getting way better results out of this kind of motion, kind of like Eddie Van Halen when he was playing that part on Eruption, you know, and so I noticed that that's how I was playing my rhythm, and so I started actually thinking about that more and try to develop it. I'd sit in the car driving with one hand, and I'd let my hand kind of droop, and then I'd just do this.
Yeah.
I'd feel my forearm twisting and just feel the weight of my hand kind of slinging back and forth, kind of like your hand is wet. There's all those analogies, right?
Yeah.
You're putting out a match, whatever. So I'd let my hand kind of get that feeling, and then I'd slip the pick in there and kind of, like I said, it was happening naturally, but then I further worked on it. Once I started noticing that was helping me, I started to work on it. I started to make it a thing. And so that allows you to, like Black Eyed Susie, there's like this, I could do that all day and not, I mean, again, you put in the necessary work that you need to, but I could do that all day more or less and not be like super worn out. I mean, you're putting in what you need to, but it's not killing me. If I was trying to strum from the elbow, it's gonna be a mess, and I'm already tired and I'm only 3 seconds in. How am I gonna get through 3 minutes, right? So, gotta have that going. But the pattern itself can fluctuate, you know, most of the time though. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and that's kind of my pattern.
You're reaching down to get that.
Yeah, and keep in mind,
you're not doing a rolling rhythm. You're reaching down.
And when you play rhythm to make that fluffy bed that I'm talking about, good rhythm, even plenty loud rhythm, is not heavy, clunky rhythm where you're hitting too much. I'm hitting less than you'd think. I'm hitting a bass note, and then I'm letting that breathe through beat 2. So I'm going 1, 2. But that low note's still there, but there's no reason I need to re-hit it. No. It already happened. It's like a piano. You'd go bass. I mean, I'm not a piano player. I'm just saying, you do the left hand, you hit your bass note, chord, bass, chord. Essentially, I don't play the piano. They'd probably do way more than that, but that's how I think about it. You know,
I think that's all they do.
Separate the lows and the highs. Separate the lows and the highs, you know. So I'm literally, when I'm strumming, the strums are 3 strings. That's it.
Yeah.
And that allows you to also be efficient as far as accommodating these faster tempos.
Yeah, okay.
You know, right? But yeah. That more or less, I may do more.
And it feels good. I feel the groove. There's one instrument, and you feel the groove.
Yeah, you want to establish groove more than anything. So if you're getting too busy in your rhythm and it's detracting from groove, in my opinion, you're not doing it right. And
too busy, and now there's a lot going on there.
There's a lot going on there, but it's a consistent pad.
It's okay.
You know, I'm not jabbing in too much extra. You can overdo bass notes. You can overdo passing chords.
Overdo syncopation. Overdo chords.
And Tony did a lot of it. And if I tried to play rhythm like Tony, I feel like for me I would be busy. But Tony, specifically Tony, he's the only guy I've ever heard do it.
Right. And his
so
brother.
Beautifully. He fits everything in the pocket just right to where I absolutely love it. It only enhanced groove. If it enhances groove, you're safe.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you got your questions answered, and a special thank you to IBMA for letting us film here, for letting us talk to so many great players. Don't forget that you can check out lessonswithmarcel.com. You can see that Tony Rice book. Once again, unfortunately, you won't get any rhythm playing in there. But other than that, that's all I got. So you have a nice day.